Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Bihari Kopijana Bhalabha Grivardhari Jaya Grivardhari Kopijana Bhalabha Grivardhari Jaya Grivardhari Kopijana Bhalabha Grivardhari Jaya Grivardhari Sodanandana Raja Dhanaranjana Jaya Raja Dhanaranjana Yasodanandana Raja Dhanaranjana Jaya Raja Dhanaranjana Yamuna Dhiravarachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Yamuna Dhiravarachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Yamuna Dhiravarachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari. Gopidana Balaba Grivardhari Jaya Grivardhari. Gopidana Baba Grivardhari Jaya Grivardhari. Yasodanandana Brajadanarandana Jaya Brajadanarandana. Sodanandana Brajadanarandana Jaya Brajadanarandana. Yamuna Dhiravarachari Jaya Kunja Vihari. Yamuna Dhiravarachari Jaya Kunja Vihari. Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhangsa Prabhudakacharya Asadhara Satushi Shriman His Divine Grace Shalisi Bhaktivedanta Swami Raj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Harivas Slava Asabranam Bhaktam Slava Shri Guru Shri Garangi Mam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Bhajarane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatyade Siddharne Om Agyanatipadandasya Gananjana Stalakaya Chaksur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shiva Sakans Vitams Cha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Sudha Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapa Tribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patidanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranitinanda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivastadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 8, The Churning of the Milk Ocean, Text 26, has no purport, so I'll just, a lot of verses without purports, so I'll just read what we have here. The inhabitants of Gandharva Loka and Charana Loka then took the opportunity to play their musical instruments, such as conch shells, bugles, and drums. They began dancing and singing along with their wives. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, the great sage Angira, and similar directors of universal management showered flowers and chanted mantras indicating the transcendental glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All the demigods, along with the Prajapatis and their descendants, being blessed by Lakshmi's glance upon them, were immediately enriched with good behavior and transcendental qualities. Thus, they were very much satisfied. O king, because of being neglected by the goddess of fortune, the demons and rakshasas were depressed, bewildered, and frustrated, and thus they became shameless. Next appeared Varuni, the lotus-eyed goddess who controls drunkards. Why are you laughing?
I'm amused that anyone can control a drunkard.
Varuni can. She's made out of honey. With the permission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the demons headed by Bali Maharaj took possession of this young girl. O king, thereafter, while the sons of Kasyapa, both demons and demigods, were engaged in churning the ocean of milk, a very wonderful male person appeared. He was strongly built, his arms were long, stout, and strong. His neck, which was marked with three lines, resembled a conch shell. His eyes were reddish, and his complexion was blackish. He was very young. He was garlanded with flowers, and his entire body was fully decorated with various ornaments. He was dressed in yellow garments and wore brightly polished earrings made of pearls. The tip of his hair was anointed with oil, and his chest was very broad. His body had all good features, and he was stout and strong like a lion, and he was decorated with bangles. In his hand he carried a jug filled to the top with nectar. This person was Dhanvantari, a plenary portion of Lord Vishnu. He was very conversant with the science of medicine, and as one of the demigods, he was permitted to take a share in the sacrifices. Purport. Sriman Vacharya remarks, Tejam Satyach Chala Artam Harir Dhanvantarir Vibhu Samartopya Suranam Tu swahastad amuchat sudam. Dhanvantari, who was carrying the jug containing nectar, was a plenary incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But although he was very strong, the Asuras were able to take the jug of nectar from his hands. Upon seeing Dhanvantari carrying a jug of nectar, the demons, desiring the jug and its contents, immediately snatched it away by force. When the jug of nectar was carried off by the demons, the demigods were morose. Thus they sought shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who always desires to fulfill the ambitions of his devotees, saw that the demigods were morose, he said to them, "Do not be aggrieved. By my own energy, I shall bewilder the demons by creating a quarrel among them. In this way I shall fulfill your desires to have the nectar." Text 38. Mita kaler abhutesham tad arte tarsha chetasam aham purvam natvam natvam iti prabho. Mita kaler abhutesham Tararte tarsha chetasam aham purvam natvam iti prabho. Mita kalera bhutesha aham purvam natvam iti prabhu. Mita kalera bhutesham ardarte tarsha chetasam aham purvam natvam iti prabhu. So you can remember the Sanskrit verse. If someone's trying to take prasadam from you, you can go aham purvam. Natvam iti prabhu. I'm first. Not you, Prabhu. Okay. Everyone has that down? Ladies. Lahutesham Tadarte tarsha chetasam aham purvam natvam iti prabhu. You said that with a lot of conviction. Oh, that's good. Aham kaliraham dutam tararte tarsha chetasam aham purvam natvam iti prabhu. Mita, among themselves, kali, disagreement and quarrel. Adbhut, there was, tesham, of all of them, tararte, for the sake of nectar, tarsha chetasam, bewildered in heart and soul by the illusory energy of Vishnu. Aham, I, purvam, first. Aham, purvam, or I, purvam, first. Na, not. Tvam, you. Na, not. Tvam, you. Iti, thus. Prabhu, O King. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O King, a quarrel then arose among the demons over who would get the nectar first. each of them said, "You cannot drink it first. I must drink it first. Me first, not you." Ever hear anyone say that? We are standing on line, you're waiting there for a few hours, then suddenly comes along and just breaks into the line ahead of you. Not you, not you, me first, me first. It's Kali Yuga. This is a symptom of demons, purport. The first concern of a non-devotee is how to enjoy his personal sense gratification at once, whereas the devotee's first concern is to satisfy the Lord. This is a distinction between the non-devotee and the devotee. In this material world, since most people are non-devotees, they regularly compete, fight, disagree, and war among themselves. For everyone wants to enjoy and satisfy his own senses. Therefore, unless such demons become Krishna conscious and are trained to satisfy the senses of the Lord, there can be no question of peace in human society or any society, even that of the demigods. The demigods and devotees, however, always surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus the Lord is always anxious to satisfy their ambitions. While the demons fight to satisfy their own senses, devotees engage in devotional service to satisfy the senses of the Lord. The members of the Krishna consciousness movement must be alert in regard to this point, and then their preaching of the Krishna consciousness movement will be successful. Namo Vishnu Viraya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskatyade Sadarane. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Vyavasayatmaka buddhi ekeha kuru nandana bahushaka yanantascha buddhyo vyavasayinam. That those who are on this path, they're resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. In other words, those who are on this path are resolute. Path of what? The path of Krishna consciousness. That there's a reality, and it's a reality that goes beyond anyone's ability to speculate, because that reality comes and is explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, we ourselves, what we can do is hear about that reality not only in the spiritual world, but even right before us, what that reality is, and then try to act according to that vision of what is actually to be done and what's not to be done. Then, by Krishna's mercy, he may reveal to us what we were trying to understand theoretically, he may reveal to us by realization. And then we can see things clearer, if not eventually, as they actually are. On the other hand, Krishna says, Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam taya parita chetasam vyavasayatmaka buddhi samadona vidiyate. That those Bhogaishvarya, those who are Bhoga and Aishvara, those who are attracted by sense gratification and material opulence, the resolute determination for devotional service does not take place. Bhogaishvara prasaktanam, those who become attached to two things, gaining money or resources in order to gratify one's senses, without any consideration of dharma, what is the laws of nature, what is the desire of Krishna, or the purpose of life, which is to get out of the bodily concept of life and realize our eternal relation with Krishna. So that's called dharma and moksha, and in between, if one is actually following dharma, then one will perform one's activities to maintain the body in such a way as to gratify the senses as to being conducive towards liberation from the material conception of life. But if there's no dharma, then everyone will just speculate on how to get their resources somehow or another. There's no rules and regulations. You can kill animals, you can kill your children, you can poison other people, you can do so many things. As long as you make money, it's all right. Because the bottom line is the bottom line. Money, money sweeter than honey. And what does that money utilize? For sense gratification. But if one doesn't follow religious principles, the senses never become gratified. The senses become gratified when they're actually met the desired amount of sense gratification, then they're satisfied. But anything less than that or over it will leave the senses dissatisfied, agitated. And therefore, one's mind will become less and less capable. One's mind will become more and more cloudy, and because the mind is cloudy, consciousness will be unclear, and because consciousness is unclear, therefore one will simply think that the purpose of life is to get more money. The reason why I'm not happy is I don't have enough material things. I don't have enough opportunities to gratify my senses. There's too much time between one gratification of one sense and the next. Therefore, I should be able to eat at any moment, whatever my tongue dictates, whatever my mind dictates to me, whatever it may be. And the nature of the mode of passion is that it gradually, when it's unrestrained, when it doesn't actually, when it's not regulated to come to the mode of goodness, it generally degrades into the mode of ignorance. And therefore, today I'm eating so-and-so, and the next soon I'll be a cannibal, eating dogs and cats and human beings. The sages of Naimisharanya, where they were shocked to hear that a cow was being beaten. Nowadays, to kill a cow is considered part of the economic development. If you beat a dog, it's a little bit disturbing. Like there's some report that they were using puppies for kind of grotesque experiments. So people become disturbed. You're killing a puppy, a dog. But if they're killing cows, that's completely normal. That's you're supposed to do that. Otherwise, what would happen to all our franchises? Food, fast foods. People wouldn't have anything to eat. They'd have to eat each other. Actually, there was one famous author, I think his name was Oliver Twist, who wrote Gulliver's Travels. Jonathan Swift, yeah. There was a famine in Ireland at that time, I guess maybe even in England, and he proposed that the best way of solving the famine would that you take all your children. You've all heard of Gulliver's Travels, I'm sure. You've heard of that?
What is that?
Gulliver's Travels?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You take all the children who are less than 1 year old, and you kill them, slaughter them, and then you feed them to all the hungry people. So he was joking, he was being sarcastic, but he actually got followers thinking that this was a good idea. Oh, you're shocked now, just like the sages of Naimisharanya were shocked to hear that they were beating on a bull. But if you told someone, actually there are slaughterhouses and they're killing cows, what would they think? So what? So soon it'll be, children, of course, 1 year old. They're already children, they're aborting them, and if they come out alive, they kill them. And then they even have some idea that there should be some allowance that if you have a child up to 3 years old, you should be allowed to kill it if it has some deformity. Just like the Nazis did in Germany, which was more or less, they got their idea from the American eugenicists, which were actually doing something similar in the 1920s and 30s. They were aborting children and they were sterilizing people that they thought were not sufficiently intelligent. And these were laws in states all around America. And the Nazis took it up, and they started the program of eugenicists in Germany and other places where people with less intelligence, then they sterilized them or slaughtered them. They killed them in their concentration camps. And they did experiments with children and all kinds of people. The only difference was between one side and the other is that they lost the war. Otherwise, some of our leaders in our so-called our side probably would have been tried for humanity. What do they call it? Crimes against humanity. Anyhow, the point is that if people are not understanding what the laws of nature are, then they're going to simply be bewildered by the illusory energy and the modes of passion, ignorance, and that's how they're going to see things. In the mode of passion and ignorance, they'll simply see people as bodies. And as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Ukramantam siddhim vapi bhunjana va gunam vita vimudo nanapashanti pashanti jnana chakshusha. The foolish, they cannot understand how the living entity quits his body, or what kind of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But those whose eyes were trained with knowledge can actually see all this clearly. In other words, only in the mode of goodness can one actually understand what kind of body one is in. Because eyes have to be trained with knowledge. And who's training? Well, here we have Dhanvantari. He's an expansion of Krishna. And he gave the science called Ayurveda. And Ayurveda explains how the body works, what kind of body we have, how it works, and how it doesn't work. Now, if we don't agree with that, we take some experimental medicine, which was created simply out of desire to make money and exploit people. We take that as actually our standard of health care, then obviously we're at odds with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's not going to work very well. Of course, there are elements, even with the current healthcare system, which are necessary because of the removal of most of the other healthcare systems, such as the ability to take care of traumatic injuries. And therefore, if you get run over by a truck, it's best to go to a hospital and get treated there, because an Ayurvedic doctor will not be able to help you very much by giving you some herbs. What's that? Yeah, at that point. So although in Ayurveda there's a book called Sushruta Samhita, which is about surgery, so they did take care of traumatic injuries, but of course they didn't have trucks back then, so people would get run over by a bullock cart or something, which is probably less traumatic in most cases. They didn't fall out of airplanes, or they didn't, there were no bullets back then. So anyhow, the point is that medicine, if it understands things, Krishna has explained how things work in all fields. And anything that goes away from that understanding is called speculation. And from the material point of view, it's not going to be so helpful. For instance, modern medicine is expert at covering over the problems that people create. But by covering over, for instance, by steroids, by opiates, they may cover over the problem, but the problem with that is that people don't change their lifestyle, because they don't take it seriously, the pain that's supposed to warn one against working against the laws of nature. The symptoms of disease are actually the attempt of the body to purify itself from the toxins that we ourselves are creating mentally and physically by working against the laws of nature, called pragya aparad. Pragya means intelligence, aparad means offenses against the material nature. eating too much or sleeping too much. Yukta hara viharas, yukta chetas vikarmasu. Or eating too little or sleeping too little. One who's temperate in its habits of eating, sleeping, work, and recreation can mitigate the material pains by practice of the yoga system. But by covering over the symptoms of disease, then instead of actually curing anything, one is actually aggravating the situation by encouraging people to go on, usually with sinful activities. In the name that, don't worry about it, we have you covered. Yes, you definitely have it covered over completely. So one should actually try to understand what kind of body we're in. As I said before, it has become so bewildering to people, they don't even know if they're a man or a woman anymore. They have 70 different designations, more than that now. And now the United States has decided that on its passports, you don't have to declare yourself male or female, you just have some other designation you can declare to yourself. Half animal, half germ, half person. So people become so bewildered, and therefore, although the demons, the asuras, they want the nectar, what is this all for? They're trying to become immortal. Like the demigods also want to be immortal. Everyone wants to be eternal. Not only ourselves, but even the demons want to be eternal. But their very methodology of becoming eternal will actually bring them deeper and deeper into the modes of ignorance, away from eternity. They may get some temporary benefit from their attempts, spending billions of dollars to make themselves immortal by drugs, by surgery, by so many different means. But the result is that they're actually lessening the lifespan and placing themselves in a position where they're going to have to become degraded into the lower species of life. So because they don't know what to be done, what's not to be done, they can't see anything clearly. They don't even know what kind of body they're in. They don't know about transmigration. They don't know about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They think they're going to steal the nectar, steal all the money, and by their mechanical means, by their demoniac efforts, control the universe, eliminate God, and become immortal, become the laws of nature. But as it explains here, that Krishna always tricks them, and they'll wind up fighting amongst themselves and killing themselves off. Even the demigods are powerless. Still the demons will simply, whatever power, position, whatever the influence they get, they'll wind up competing with each other eventually and killing themselves off. And maybe whatever devotees are left can take charge at that time, if they understand things properly. So it's not only medicine, it's in every field that they become, the demons have taken over, the asuras have taken over, and have misdirected the entire human civilization into becoming more and more degraded. And therefore the only hope is to eventually reestablish God consciousness, which will lead to a civilized society where the Varna and Ashram system is implemented to some degree or another, so people can live as human beings and understand how to serve sacrifice, how to perform yajna for Vishnu, and therefore fulfill the aim of life, whatever mode of nature they have to be situated. What they have to understand is that the purpose of life is not sense gratification, but to sacrifice for Vishnu. And if everyone has that idea, there can actually be unity in society. And if people don't have that idea, it's exemplified, but they don't accept Krishna's words. They can't even accept them in the most elementary, in the most obvious forms, in terms of, these Vedic sciences Krishna has given. They accept demoniac so-called sciences as real, and they reject Krishna's sciences as something antiquated. Doesn't apply to us anymore. We're in a different time. Which means ultimately they don't really believe in Krishna. They don't really believe Krishna knows even what's going on in this world, what to speak of what the spiritual world is. And therefore such an attitude means that one may be a devotee, but one will not be able to go beyond a certain level of devotion, because one doesn't really have faith in Krishna and his instructions, and therefore one will simply be tormented, even on the most elementary level, by all the problems one is creating for oneself, even though one may be attempting to become advanced in devotional service. Everything that goes against Krishna's instructions will simply create problems for ourselves. And of course, if one is sincere and Krishna gives the intelligence, then in spite of all these problems we're creating for ourselves, we can still become try to make advancement in spiritual life. But there has to come a point where we realize that if we really want to have faith in Krishna, we also have to accept his instructions, how he lived, how he wanted us to live, how he wanted us to help others understand what real life is about. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? What's that? Okay, we have our microphone before. Here's a microphone. Is that a microphone for?
Thank you. So about medicine of Ayurveda, the propaganda is so big that I couldn't bring medicine from India to Europe here. I went to India to see one of the best Ayurvedic doctors in Maipuri, and he gave me this medicine, and they didn't allow me to bring them here. So I was forced to take this medicine that they sell here. And so
Yeah, well, that's the whole idea. Is you control. The whole idea is control, not for people's benefit.
Thank you.
But for the benefit of the people who are controlling. It's a give and take philosophy. You give to me and I take from you. That's good give and take. You give to me and I take from you. Anything else? Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the class. We know from the Shastra, and we hear it also repeatedly, that when we go against the laws of Krishna, we are going to be in trouble. But look at what is happening in the world today, the butchery that is going on and the demoniac forces, they seem to be just flourishing more and more.
Yes, that's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Where is that verse where Krishna says flourishing? In the 16th chapter. It might be idam te imam prapsya manoritam. Anyhow, they appear to be flourishing at least. Yeah, without Krishna has to allow people, the Kali Yuga is all about that. Let people live out their fantasies of sense gratification to the ultimate, to the greatest extent they can, before they enter into the lower species of life, get the reactions for it. So Krishna doesn't interfere with people's independence. If they want to go to hell, then Krishna gives them all facility to do that, because that's their desire. Otherwise, if Krishna interfered, he wouldn't be allowing people to choose, to have a desire, to go away from him.
So only very few of the human population who are actually devotees will understand what is to be done, what is not to be done. And
that's right. There's very few human beings left. Most people are not on the human platform.
Right.
But there's a hope. That's why we're chanting Hare Krishna, because we ourselves are not necessarily fully on the human platform either. But we're hoping that by the chanting and following these instructions, we may come to that platform and become more equipped to help others come to that platform also. We understand, although human beings are not on the human platform, supposedly human beings, but they're all spiritual souls. we're not human, we're not bodies, we're not these bodies, we're all spiritual souls, and that by the process of Krishna consciousness, anyone could become elevated to the highest platform if they take to the process.
Right.
Karate, Hununda, Pulunda, Pukasha, Abhira, Shumba, Yavana, Kacharya. That Yanye Chapasya Upapashara Shaya Shudyanti Tasmai Pravishnune Namaha. That whether one is a Karate, Huna, Pulinda, Pukasha, Abhira, Shumba, Karashaya, that he could be, by association with pure devotees, one could become purified and come to the highest platform. So the problem is that we have to become purified enough to become enthusiastic to help others, and then we can actually help human society. But if we ourselves are part demon, partially trying to become a devotee, we can hardly help ourselves, what to speak of anyone else.
It seems overwhelming. The need for Krishna consciousness is just overwhelming, especially when we go out and we see the situation. It seems like almost impossible.
Well, if it was up to us, it would be impossible. What do we have? We have no power. What can we do? Only Krishna can make it happen, but he needs some instruments to make it happen through.
Right.
So we look at it and say, well, Krishna, you can't do it. It's just impossible. You may be God, but this is too much even for you. Then we're doubting Krishna's ability to do anything. And therefore, as long as we're doubtful, then Krishna can't utilize us. Of course, even when we become a perfect instrument like Prabhupada, there's only so much Krishna is going to allow us to do or work through us, because he also has to fulfill the desires of the asuras. He's not going to interfere with them. But we have to have some faith that there is a lot of potential devotees out there, a lot of innocent people. And the more serious we become about becoming instruments of Krishna, then the more we'll be able to assist them. The more
Right.
Krishna will assist them through us.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? No questions from our online? Are you checking on that? Usually we have our iPad or here or something. Okay, I guess we'll wait till tomorrow. Thank you very much. Khala. Grantaraj Srila Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande.